Good morning. It's been a while. You switched up the like count in or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it hasn't been since my new count in.
Cherub counted up to 10 and then counted down. So I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if he just didn't remember how to count or what. I was worried for a second.
I'm a drummer. I never forget how to count.
What's funny is he never told me what the countdown was. I just started doing it, and then I didn't know there was going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end of it, so then I would go live too early, and it took a little bit of an adjustment.
I mean, luckily I've been at IPD for over a year, and I just learned to just go with it.
Roll with the punches.
Good morning, everyone. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Walter Hayes. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I was asked just to help and share this morning. And just last week, we had our normal staff kickoff meeting that we do called Make It Happen. And I had something on my heart that really went well with the podcast this week. And I just want to share it. But I know that's something that we all struggle with. In fact, I've talked about this several times when I've been on the podcast, is just anxiety and worry. And it's something I've always struggled with. I'm a classic overthinker. I get that from my mom. But that's just the way I've always been, classic overthinker. But that being said, I think it's important. God's really done a lot of stuff in my life where when I do take that pause, when I do step back and think for a minute, and just not even with any expectations, just sit and just in silence for a minute, I can really see a lot that God has done for me. And I just think it's super important that we do that. So with that being said, in Philippians chapter 4:6, it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." I think Villa might have talked about this earlier this week too, but you can pray or you can panic. You can worry or you can worship. And I think it's important to remember that. In those times where it's stressful, you can just sit there and freak out, or you can just take a minute to just pray. Have you guys ever been in that situation where it's just freak out mode?
Always. I work for Dave.
Definitely.
Of course. Dave Villa sits really close to me. No.
Yeah, I've definitely had freak out moments. I'm trying to think if there's been a major one recently. Probably my biggest freak out moment was I left work early on Wednesday to go to a doctor's appointment just to have my annual physical. And I drove all the way to the wrong side of town and called Ezra and asked Ezra, I said, "Hey, I need you to log into my portal really quick because I need to know what the address is." Because I realized I drove to the opposite side of Tampa. Like, I literally drove 30 minutes the wrong direction. Mm. That was a freak out moment for me. Even though it's very, very small, that was my freak out moment of the week.
I have them way more often than I'd like to have. But I will say I've gotten better with time of taking that pause and taking that breath. In Matthew 6:25-27, it says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you worrying add a single hour to your life?" It's when you worry, it's times that you've forgotten about the promises of God. And I think that's super important. Even as a child, there's times even, I probably can't remember it as much me personally, but I can give my experience with my own kids where they were scared of the dark, or they're scared to go to bed. But I had to let them know, like, hey, I'm just in the other room. I'm here if you need me. There's nothing to worry about. I've got you. And that, assurance helped them, go to sleep. I know that's very simple, but there's so many promises of God that really are simple in the sense of don't worry about the hows, the whys, all the intricacies of that. Just worry that God's already promised you that he's got it taken care of. God tells us if we trust him, he will provide all of our needs. If we choose to not trust him, we're choosing to be on our own. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but me explain it again. If we choose not to trust him, he's not choosing for us to be on our own. We're making that decision. He still desires, and he's pursuing us. But we've made the decision that, hey, God, I don't think this is something that you can handle, And I think what we probably struggle with the most is that we need somebody, what we feel present right here in front of us, and it's that unseen. I was telling Ashton about this the other day, but there's a song by Anthony Evans called Silence, I think is the title of the song, but he talks about maybe you're speaking in the silence, and maybe that's all I need to hear. So speaking in the silence, meaning that like we want some big, massive thing to happen. In fact, when I did this Make It Happen, I had this magic trick. It's not really a magic trick, but obviously. But I was going to try to do it, but I didn't know it that well. But anyway, when I tell my kids, hey, I got this magic trick, their eyes get really big and they're like, sweet, awesome. I used to do the same magic trick with like the children's programs at church and stuff. I learned it from my assistant youth director when I was a youth pastor. But basically, you could take 2 pieces of paper, 2 napkins is what I normally use, and one of them is whole and folded behind the other, and you start to rip the one in front of it. And whenever you ball it back up, you can flip over the whole one, and it looks like you've just taken a shredded piece of paper and made it whole again. Maybe I could do it on here sometime. But anyway, the whole premise of that trick is everybody's like, whoa, that's awesome. You just made this shredded piece of paper whole. And then what I would always do is I let them see that there really wasn't a lot of magic in it. What it was I was replacing the torn, paper and giving them a new paper. But sometimes when we hear like magic, we're like, oh, it's going to be like, lasers, crazy stuff going on. It's going to be massive, but it's really simple. And I think that God's promises are very much like that too. It's a matter of, hey, don't get caught up in, God's got to do something massive right now. Like, no, you just need to pause. You need to, pray, because it's really way more simple than you think. He intends to give you what he promised. He intends to answer that prayer. He intends to fulfill the vision. But sometimes, we're just not ready yet. Mm. He wants to grow you, and when you're ready, it's going to happen. The question is, will you trust him? He wants to give you more than you've asked for, but sometimes we're just not equipped to handle it. That's a really tough pill to swallow, too. If I'm praying for God, I really feel like I'm praying because I need it, Yeah. It's not that I'm just like saying, hey, God, sometime in the future, if you could help me out. Like normally when I'm praying, I'm like, God, like I need this yesterday. And so it's really hard whenever God's saying, you got to wait. My daughter, she's just an athlete by nature, but she loves basketball. That's definitely her top sport. And my wife, though, she's a coach at heart. She coached high school sports, and she played sports all growing up. But anyway, that being said, she's hard on my kids in the sense of the coaching part of it, where she'll say, hey, you need to do this. You need to do this. And sometimes it's not fun for them. And one of the things that just happened recently is my daughter's been playing volleyball. And in volleyball, even though you need, endurance and you need to have good cardio for that, I think my daughter, because that's not her primary sport, didn't work out as much on the cardio. And my wife kept telling her, basketball's coming. You need to start getting out and run. You need to get out and run. You need to exercise. And my daughter's like, I don't need to do that. I'm good at basketball. It'll come soon enough. Well, she had practice last night for basketball, and she hadn't had it in a while. And she told my wife, she goes, at one point I thought I was going to pass out. and
just gassed.
It was because she wants basketball season to come because she thinks she's ready for basketball season. My wife was saying, hey, I know you love basketball. You want basketball to be here, but I'm telling you right now, you're not quite ready for it. You need to get out there and you need to do this, this, and this so that you're ready. And I think God does that to us too. And it's a hard hard thing to handle sometimes when we're like, God, but, this in life is good. And why would you want to prevent me from something good? And he's not trying to say, I'm trying to prevent you from something good. I'm trying to make sure you can enjoy the good. And we don't see that in the moment. I've talked about this in the podcast before too, and I shared this last week. When my wife and I, wanted kids. It didn't happen right off the bat. And it's like, God, why would you not want us to be parents? Like, that seems pretty simple. You talk about us, being, parents, and that's an important part of, discipleship and things like that. So why would you prevent us from that? And God wasn't telling us no. He was telling us, wait, because our idea of parenting was a little different than what he had in mind. We have 5 beautiful children. We've been very involved in foster care. And it's something that when I was asking for children, that wasn't what I was asking for. And God, I think, really did a work in my wife and I that we didn't probably feel as prepared as we, probably were in the moment. But I mean, God had really bigger plans than what we ever thought. Something else that I talked about as well, kind of going along with that, I do think in those times where God's told us to wait, we have this envious, and jealousy that goes on. I wrote this down. When you're in God's waiting room, you can fall to temptation of all kinds of negative emotions. You can start stressing, getting anxious, irritable. You can get envious and jealous. It's in those times that a lot of times we say, well, why did they get their prayer answered and why not me? Or, God, they probably weren't even praying about that. Why would you give them that and not me? And it took me a while to think about this, but here's some examples. God told Noah to build a boat to save his family from a flood, and it didn't rain for 120 years. God told Abraham he'd be the father of a great nation, but he didn't have his first child until he was 99 years old. God told Moses he would lead the people out of slavery from Egypt, but then sent him to the desert for 40 years to wait. Even Jesus himself spent 30 years as a carpenter before starting his ministry. The waiting was very important still, and the waiting probably wasn't ideal in the recipient's mind, but it was important, and it wasn't because God forgot. It wasn't that God was putting him off because he's like, well, I told you I was going to do that, but I really don't have that ready yet. That's probably what I do. Villa's asking if I got a project yet, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've been working really hard on it. And then I'm running to my desk, I got to hurry up and get this done. God's not doing that, I promise you. God's got it all. He had the plan ready for you before you were born. Yeah. He had the plan packaged perfectly for you. And he's just saying, but I'm going to give it to you at the right moment. My dad didn't give me keys to a car when I was 8. Yeah. I'm not ready for that responsibility. He gave my keys to me whenever I was mature enough to handle it. And God does the same thing. And sometimes we take it as but I think I could do it. I think I could do it right now. And God knows that we can't. It's not that he doesn't want us to do it. He knows that we can't do it to its fullest, and that he wants to make sure that we get not only the pleasure of doing whatever it might be, but also reap the rewards from it too.
It was really a funny metaphor you just said, because when I was, I think 11, obviously my parents never gave me the keys to the car. My grandparents lived in Plant City on 10 acres of land, and they lived on a back road, so there wasn't a lot of traffic. So one day I thought it would be a good idea to go take my grandfather's just small truck out for a ride, and I took the keys, and I ended up getting stuck because I tried to slam the gas pedal down on a dirt road and dug a hole with the tire. And it was really funny that you said that, because when you take the keys before you're ready, you end up getting stuck somewhere that you have to have somebody else come help you get out of.
It's true.
Mic drop, bro. No pun intended on your name.
Yeah.
It's a mic drop. Mike made a mic
It's a double mic drop.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
We're going to start saying mic drop, and I'm just going to fall over on the floor from now on whenever we say it.
Well, I even think whenever I was younger, my grandfather gave me the keys. My grandfather just was like, it'll buff. That was his mindset. My mom was a lot more cautious, but I'll be honest, like there's some things that my grandfather was not always the smartest about either. And so luckily my grandmother kept him in check really often, but jokes aside, I think there's several times where we're just impatient, and we have the mindset of, God, why do I have to wait? Why would you not want me to do this? Maybe it's a promotion at work. God, that promotion could do so many things for not only me, for my family. I'm a list maker, so I like to just write out crazy lists, right? And one of the things I always do is I'll talk about things like for my future. Like I have a budget, I keep a Google Drive document with my family's budget on it. And I talk about things like, hey, when we pay this off, this is where I want that money to go. And, it's kind of the Dave Ramsey thing, like every dollar's got to have a name. But like I already have dollars like ready for things in the future that I don't have yet. So it's like when I come into this money, this is what I want to do. And some of those things are really good. My wife and I have a dream that we want to help fund adoptions at some point in our life. And that's a good thing. God, why don't you just go ahead and drop a couple $100,000 on us because we can fund some adoptions now. But maybe, and if I'm being honest with myself, could I be that, of a good steward with that money to make sure it all goes the right places? Maybe I'm not. I don't know that yet. If I'm being real, and maybe God knows that. Maybe God says, hey, there's some other things that I think are in the way that it's just not the right time yet, even though it's a great thing. The good news is somebody else is in that time where it is a good time for them, and God's blessing them to do those kind of things as well right now. God's not like saying, so we're just not going to let kids get adopted. No, we've got some other people that are in the season to do that kind of stuff. And Walter, as though that might be on your heart, and I know that it's a great thing. It's just not the time yet. It's tough sometimes. It's good things. We all have those things that we want to do that we think are good.
For me, recently, obviously, I officially graduated from Thrive last night for Radiant. But for the longest time, when I left the previous church I was at, a lot of people that knew me were always just like, why aren't you playing anymore? Why aren't you playing? And I just said, right now is not my time. I can tell when I'm being pulled towards something, and I can tell when I need to pull back from something and take a step back and pause and like just step away from it. And that was a season of my life where probably one of the most predominant things I had associated myself with became my identity. And I think the reason that God had me not only not playing anywhere, but specifically keeping me away from playing somewhere was because it had become my identity. My identity was only in that, not in being a Christian, not in being a Christ follower, not in any of those things. It was, I'm a drummer. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, people would always ask me that, like, why aren't you doing it? Like, this is your calling. And I believe it is my calling, but that was the reason that I had to step back and take a pause from it, because I was allowing my calling to become my identity instead of letting my calling be a blessing to other people. So that was a really big pause for me. And then up until recently, and that's when you said God knows the plan. And I remember when it happened, it was very, very quickly. Like, there was one day I was walking through the office, and God, it sounds really bad for me to say this, but I could feel God nagging at me. Like, hey, it's time for you to play again. It's time for you to play again. I kept going, no. You'll make it obvious to me when you want me to play again. It's not just you saying it's time for you to play again. And I always argue with myself, too, when it's God talking to me. Is it my own brain talking to me, or is it God talking to me? I don't know if anybody else does that, but I do it all the time. I'm like, is this really God? Is this my own? Like, is this my own brain?
Cheeseburger ate last night, or is this the Lord?
But I vividly remember I literally was walking somewhere in the office, and Ashton literally had the Radiant, the promo that they were putting out, that they were looking for people for the worship team. And I literally passed it for half a second, and God said, right there is the opportunity I just put in front of you. And I was like, all right, I guess my pause is done. But that was the biggest pause I've probably taken in a long time, because I stopped playing for nearly 3 years. I wouldn't play because I knew that, like I said, my identity had become that I was a drummer. Not I'm a Christian, not I'm a God follower. I'm a drummer.
I will tell you too, just reminded me of a story that I think this is on the pursuit of happiness that he goes over it, but it's shared other places. But I think it's also important to, when you're asking God for something, understand that when he gives it to you, it may not look like what you thought. And in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, he talks about this guy's drowning. He's out in the ocean, he's drowning, and this boat passes or whatever, and it says, hey, do you need help? He goes, no, God's going to save me. So they leave, and then another boat comes by. Hey, do you need help? No, God's going to save me. And goes on, and then another boat comes by. Hey, do you need help? And the guy says, no, God's going to save me. Well, the guy drowns and he dies, and he gets to heaven. He's like, God, why didn't you save me? He's like, I sent 3 boats to you, dummy. So I do think sometimes in our pause, we can also miss those opportunities. You just remind me of that, though, when you said, you saw the flyer or whatever, the post about needing drummers, and you may not have thought Radiant was where it was going to be, right. But you were also open to, hey, God.
Well, Dave commented, and it was perfect going into the end of that story. There's a difference between pausing and procrastinating.
Yeah.
I was moving from pausing to procrastinating. I was legitimately moving from pausing to procrastinating. Procrastinating is putting it off, and I was starting to get to that point where I'm going, no, I'm just I'll do this later. No, it's not right now. And there's definitely a difference between that. Like, pausing was what I was going through when I knew God was telling me, listen, I need you to take a step back. Mm-hmm. This is your calling, but you need to take a step back. Procrastinating was God going, no, it's literally right there in front of your face. No, that can't be it. That's not the right one. That's not the right sign.
Yeah, I just think there's been many times in my life where God has had something where it didn't look like what I thought, and I could have easily missed the boat, so to speak. I could have missed out on it. And so fortunate that I didn't. Even this job here, I've known Dave Villa for a while now, but when we first met, I told him, I was like, man, I hope that someday I can work with you. And we stayed in contact. We'd talk on the phone or through text messages here and there. And there were a couple different occasions where, there was an opportunity, but, whatever it was, although for me it was like, oh, man, this is the right time. We got to do this. My wife was like, it is not the right time. We are not doing this. And but when it finally came together, it was like the perfect time. Even though we've had challenges with some of the stuff we had designed for when we came here, and we're talking about with the company strategy of what we thought was going to happen didn't happen quite in the time that we thought, but it was still the perfect time for me to be here. Mm-hmm. And so it's just been a blessing. I know we can look through the comments. I don't know if anybody has any comments or anything that's going on before we get ready to close out.
I know actually my mom had texted me and a few other people in the room. She said that God is tough love and grace love. For the same reason, there's potential, and he encompasses both of those things because he knows the beginning and the end. And so it's, maybe Mike in that season needed that tough love to kind of push him forward and hey, oop, there you go, a little, just a little nudge, you know what I mean? Like a mama bird, right? Like when they're teaching their baby birds how to fly, it's it's literally a nudge, and it's you're gonna fall, and then you're gonna have to learn how to pick yourself up right when you're about to fall. And it's the same thing. I think sometimes the Lord knows the seasons that we need of a little push and a little nudge, and then also the times where we need to be embraced and just completely hey, I'm gonna comfort you, my child. I'm gonna walk you through this season, and then it's a huge thing when we, I think, invite the Lord into that, and we allow Him to kind of show us our needs, because we don't know them. I know there's a few comments, like you said, Walter, and then I know we can kick it to you in a second, Mike. Let's see. So sometimes Jumasani said this, sometimes the lesson is to learn and to pause. That's crazy. Are we willing to walk in obedience to just, hey, pause? Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing, a hard pill to swallow at times, for sure. Let's see if we see anything else.
All right, I got to read this one out because I have an example to go with this. Jumasani said the other day when we were talking about freak out moments, they were about to give his little girl a bath, and he suddenly felt warm liquid dripping down the side of his body.
Been there.
Oh my gosh, I literally took my daughter out of the bathtub last night, and there was no diapers upstairs, so then I had to carry her downstairs, and all she has is a towel, and she keeps writhing around, so the towel's pretty much fallen off at this point, so I'm just carrying a naked baby around the house trying to find diapers. And I'm like, I swear to Bob, if this child pees on me, I'm about to like put her for adoption. Like, I ain't doing this. Oh man.
Been there. I will tell you, I was thinking about this too. I don't know why this story just came to me. I don't know fully what truth there is to this story. There's obviously probably some truth to it. But it's the story of the flaming hot Doritos. So you can Google about the janitor story in Doritos. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up real quick. So this guy was a janitor. And I'm going to paraphrase the story really quick because I know we don't have much time. But he basically had an idea, from what I understand, and he was the janitor. And he somehow gets a meeting with some people with Frito-Lay and has this idea for flaming hot, like Doritos or Cheetos or whatever it might be. I don't eat those. But anyway, he was a janitor, and he had this idea. And he got with the right people, had the right conversations, and ended up getting elevated into this new position. So when we think about this procrastination part, he could have easily thought, I'm just a janitor. Like, nobody's going to pay attention to my idea. Nobody's going to listen to me. I'm just here to sweep floors. And instead, he's like, I have an opportunity. I'm going to seize it. And it turned into something more. Like, Google that story because there's obviously a lot more in depth you can go. But my dad told me that one time here within the last couple of years or something. I always thought it was cool, just thinking, man, this janitor, like, he could have easily just been like, man, that's way above my pay grade. I'm not equipped for that. And instead, he took an opportunity, and God blessed him for it. So I know we're getting ready to get out of here. I pray that as you guys go on through the weekend, finish out your week, that you just have a blessed week. You know, I tell this to my team every day when we have our kickoff meetings and we pray. You know, I pray that I glorify God in all that I do, and I pray that I can be a blessing to each and every person that I encounter, whether it's in the, grocery, store line, whether it's talking to somebody on the phone. I just want to be a blessing because I don't know what the other side's going through, and there's times where I do fall short on that. I'm not going to lie, but that's my prayer every day. I just want to be a blessing to people and lift them up because that's what the world needs a lot more of right now. So,
Sure.
Any other closing thoughts?
It's good. Be blessed.
All right.
Thank you so much, Walter. for
Yeah.
joining us
Thank you
today.
guys.
Thank you all for tuning in today. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Really big thank you to Walter for filling in today and hosting the podcast. Really quick, we don't post too many of them too often anymore, but today we do have a song of the day, which is Anthony Evans' Silence. Walter mentioned it earlier in the podcast. If you guys would like, we have a daily encouragement text message that goes out every single morning, Monday through Friday. It is completely free for you to opt into. You can text the letters EZGC to 813-522-3356. Like I said, it's completely free. It's a text from Dave every single morning just to kind of help your day get going. If you guys want, just opt into it. To everybody that joins us live every single morning, thank you all for being with us. The hearts, the emojis, the comments that you guys constantly leave with us. We love it. We appreciate you guys being here with us every morning. But if for any reason you can't make it, there are two different ways that you can always keep up with us. Number one, we upload the replay every day on YouTube at 3 p.m. So make sure you guys go to YouTube, look up Game Changer Podcast Live, and you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the bell because it'll notify you when we upload the newest episode. As well, if you guys want to take us on the road, on the go, or if you prefer audio versions, you can always find us on your favorite podcasting platform. We're on pretty much all of them, the biggest being Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you guys are watching on replay or listening to any of our audio podcasting platforms, you guys can always join us live every single morning at 8:30 a.m. EST on YouTube and Facebook. Just search David Villa Game Changer and we will come up. Make sure you guys check out our featured Bible plan of the week. We just dropped it last Friday. It is He Said, She Said, He Says. We did a podcast series on it, I believe, about a month ago. So you guys could actually listen to the podcast series as well as read through the Bible plan. Let us know what you guys think. We would love to hear your feedback on it. I think Dave said this is his favorite one we've done so far, and we've got about 30 of them out there so far, if not more. But thank you all for tuning in. Next week, we will be back bright and early Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Hope you guys have a blessed weekend. We will see you guys next week. And on that note,
We out.